Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 5, 2023 meeting of the Romeo Planning Commission. We're supposed to start this evening's meeting with a public hearing on a parcel plan, which is, wrong glasses, sorry, folks. Down there by Powell. Doesn't matter where it is, we're postponing that public hearing because we don't have all the information we need to make a judgment. Is that correct, Ms.?
Correct. The applicant asked to withdraw because they were still preparing plans, however, public notice already went out. So the planning commission can postpone this, either to the next meeting or to whenever the village actually receives all the information from the applicant.
All right, well, let's just call it postponed then, okay? So, for the regular meeting, we begin tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'll stand for the pledge. Bill needs to stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Cindy, you want to do a roll call, please?
Stegner,
Here.
Hall. Here. Webb,
Yeah.
Hale,
Here.
Minton,
Here.
Fowler. Here. Justin Parker,
Present.
Bill Parker,
Yep.
Grandstaff,
Here.
Okay, now we move on to approval of tonight's agenda. I'd like to make a change in the agenda. Item number 9, alternate discussion for 297. I would like to eliminate that from the agenda, and Ms. Miller is here to give a presentation, and I'm gonna ask her to move that presentation up to the beginning of the meeting to the open forum, if you don't mind. I'd like to do it that way.
So is it gonna be item number 1, is it, I'd prefer that it stay as not, just public comment.
Well, it's gonna be in the open forum, so you can get all your information out, okay? It's just gonna be the first thing we do, so, if anybody.
Even though it's already on your agenda.
Yeah, we can change our agenda, that's our prerogative.
I would just question, if we're going to move it from the agenda to the public forum, public comment, are we then gonna are we gonna restrict time limit on public comments?
I know on Village.
The village does, but if it's
That's
a,
5 minutes, but we don't really have that rule.
well, it's a 3, okay, I just wanna make sure, because if it's on the agenda, there is no real time limit.
Right,
I just wanna make sure we're not gonna restrict.
We're not gonna restrict
anyone.
it, except, if somebody rambles on, I'm gonna turn the gavel down. So, if you don't have any objection, I'd like to move that, so.
I do, actually, because then you won't be able to take any action if it's just in public comment.
I can guarantee you there probably won't be much action.
But it's your meeting, so whatever you decide. is
Yes,
interesting.
there won't be much action
Okay,
on this,
thank
because first of all, we just got these papers, and it's something that we would want to consider, so,
Understood.
okay?
Thank you
So,
for asking.
anyway, so I'll make the motion that we eliminate number 9 on the agenda and, move that subject up to forum, open forum. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I think it passes. No, there were no objections, correct? Okay, so we've adopted that, so, now we move on to approval of the meeting minutes from September 7. Any comments, any changes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now, public forum. Ms. Miller. And Ms.
I want to go first.
How are you? Okay,
Do I just, okay,
go on up there.
I said,
I think it's on.
forgive my dress, I just got done doing the 9th grade football game. Don't normally dress like this. I wrote a couple things here because I wanted to make sure I got everything right. So I'm just gonna read it. As you may remember, I came before you guys about 6 months ago and informed you that there was a Prospect Chandler residential group and that we formed to oppose the sale of the middle school property to a developer. We as a group have been to every school board meeting since, and in August, the board made a motion to sell the property, and it didn't get a second. So it died that night, but it's still on the table. It's still there where they could sell it. Our neighborhood group still meets, and our numbers are growing every day. The people of our area, Bruce, Romeo, and Washington, are very concerned about this property. At the last school board meeting, we were told that we should talk to the village, and that's what brings us here tonight. That we wanted to at least present a few things, let you know what we're up to, and see if we can't do something with that property eventually that benefits everybody. So at this point, I'd like to ask Elizabeth to continue, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Lisa, Bill, Brian, another Bill, Jim, Andrew, Carl, Justin, and Janice. Is it Janice? It's Janice, right? Okay. All right. Thank you. And also Karen. Nice to meet you, the planner. I haven't met you yet. Thank you for hearing some of what we have to say tonight. I'm here tonight on behalf of our community group in the concerns regarding 297 Prospect Street. The first reason why we're here, and you all have this in your packets right there, is we are coming to you requesting for a recommendation for Romeo Village Council to engage in a community discovery session with the cooperation of Romeo Community School Board with a goal of identifying alternate uses for the property. The group of over 75 Romeo Village neighboring residents and community members is interested in the future of the former middle school property that benefits all the residents of the greater community of Romeo and aligns with the village master plan that was adopted on October 6, 2022. We have been in contact with Gerard Santoro of Macomb County's Planning and Economic Development Division of Macomb Green, Brian Marzoff of Six Rivers Land Conservancy, who indicated there might be several options to explore, including funding opportunities. They will be willing to facilitate a discussion at a public meeting, but only at the invitation of the Romeo Village and the school board. We, as a neighborhood group, cannot get that governmental body to come and just go through an exploration process. We respectfully request that the Planning Commission forward this recommendation to the Village Board to invite representatives from Macomb County, Six Rivers Land Conservancy to facilitate the discovery session in an open discussion regarding the former middle school property. The goal of the discovery session would be to suggest and explore feasible options and opportunities for the future that are amenable with all parties, including concerned residents. Our community group has donated funds that could be used to offset some costs associated with a meeting of this nature. As of right now, we have in-hand donations, $1,295, that have been collected anywhere from $1 up to the biggest donation we got was over $200 from one individual, and it continues to grow. So that's our first request, is we just want to have a community meeting with the county and with a few other parties that could help us figure out funding so this property could possibly stay within the hands of the village people. And I want to thank Anita Bonnick and Rachel Eckhurst for being here, and also Chris Young, school board members. And so we're really pleased that they're here to hear what we have to say. The second thing that we are requesting is the recommendation for Romeo Village Council to produce a board action, including an official statement regarding the village's intended future for the use of Thompson Place, the recently discovered road in the middle of that property that goes west to east between Chandler and Prospect Street. A little history on why we're seeking that. We would like for the Village Council to take official action stating that the Village of Romeo has no intention to vacate Thompson Place between Chandler and Prospect. This is in line with President Poznansky's public stance before Romeo Community Schools Board meeting on July 24th, 2023, and statements recording in the Macomb Daily in an article published on September 25th, 2023. This action would protect the village and its resources in the event a potential future developer claims they were misled on the extent of which the property could be developed. As of now, to my understanding, the village has not taken a stance on whether they would, an official stance on whether they would vacate that or officially, say no. Ultimately, our intention would be to request the Romeo Community Schools Board retract the active RFP, request for proposal, for the sale of the property and to place a moratorium on the sale of 297 Prospect Street for a period of time as recommended by you, the Planning Commission. You all know these facts better than we do. You know how long things take with grant funds and whatnot, or have the ability to find those things out better than we could as a community group. Resident and neighbor Franco Folino is here, and he's going to speak to that in just a moment. The surrounding community would like to see the property developed in a more beneficial manner than what is currently being considered by the Romeo Community School Board. We sincerely feel that the best path at this point is for all parties to begin and engage in a strategic pause on the sale of the property. This will create the time necessary for the exploration of alternate options for the property with community-wide engagement and collaboration with experienced organizations such as Macomb County's Planning and Economic Development Team, Six Rivers Land Conservancy, and the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund. After viable options have been identified, a solution agreeable to all concerned parties can be selected. In closing, for your reference, we've included an expert guidance specific to Romeo at large and this empty lot from a university-educated certified arborist as to the benefits of green space within a community. We've also included just page 25 of the master plan to show just how limited the green space is within the village, and we included that quote there. So for that, Franco, I'll turn it over to you. And I would like to answer any questions if anybody has any questions on this. As it's forum, I know that's not typical, but we were hoping to have some interaction tonight with the board. Thank you.
Good evening. As Elizabeth said, my name is Franco Folino. I live at 253 Chandler Street. My wife and I have lived there for about a year and a half now. We moved in March of 2022. We're a military family and have moved far too many times over the last 2 decades. I jokingly told my wife that my next move will be when the funeral home comes to pick me up. And I sincerely mean that too. We want a homestead here in Romeo, and we love this community. We want to see our kids grow up and go through the school system and be here as long as we possibly can. Richard and Elizabeth bring up great points, and I commend both of them for their efforts thus far in this initiative. We represent a vast cross-section of a deeply concerned village, and we are here to request assistance from the Planning Commission in having our voices heard. Simply put, nobody wants to see maximum density housing developed on 297 Prospect Street. In fact, it seems most residents, when we talk about this in our garages over the water cooler, most residents tend to discuss a green space in that area. There are so many reasons why we should be exploring alternate, more beneficial futures for this property. Our group has been attempting to get information about the future of this property from the school board, as well as attending school board meetings to socialize our concerns for a considerable amount of time. These efforts began as soon as the middle school was demolished. The school has conveyed that while they appreciate our efforts to communicate our concerns, we are communicating to the wrong board, since in their view, they are simply selling the property. But the village council and this commission will determine the finer details of the development of this property. We understand the school board's perspective on how they view their role in this situation, but we respectively contest that if this property is sold to a developer with the pretense of minimum lot size, maximum density, the broad strokes of this issue will be done, and the village will be left with negligible space remaining to maneuver appropriately for the sake of the community. So, here we are. We are asking for the school board to take part in a strategic pause with this property recommended by the Planning Commission through the Village Council. This will allow adequate time for clear collaboration. As Elizabeth put it, it is a community discovery session between the school board, the Village Council, and the residents. We would also appreciate the Planning Commission's knowledge and expertise in determining the appropriate amount of time needed to effectively collaborate and identify a solution that satisfies the needs and wants of all parties involved. We understand there's a financial aspect here. There are tax implications based on however the property is developed. We understand all that. And as Elizabeth said, there are funds available. We just need time to explore that. We don't have any experience in terms of putting any kind of time frame on how long it would take to explore that. Would it take 6 months, 2 years, 4 years? That's what we're asking the planning commission to advise on and potentially recommend to the village that would go to the school board. Nominally, it would take, I don't know, let's just say 3 years to figure out a future for a property of this size in the setting that it's in. How about we go ahead and take that time and go forth with the future of Romeo? With a little bit of effort, we are confident it's possible to achieve a future for this property that is in the best interest of the village now, as well as 100 years from now. And we would greatly appreciate your help in getting there. So with that, Elizabeth mentioned maybe this could be a little bit of an open forum. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but the question that we would have for you is just a wag. What would you think if we were to have this community discovery session with some of the entities that Elizabeth mentioned between the village and the school board and residents? How long would you think that a process like that would take? If we were going to ask the school board to put a moratorium on the RFP, let's pause the selling aspect for now. How long would we need for something like that to explore this as a village?
Anybody have an answer to that?
I know this is nebulous, and probably nobody wants to say anything officially, but we all live in this community. We all live in this village together, and I feel like the school board's working hard to look out for the best interests of the students, and they have to get this asset off their books and benefit financially. We need to make sure that we're developing a community that we all want to live in, and that our children also potentially want to live in, and it continues to flourish. So there's 3 different entities: the commission, the village council, and the board. How do we all get on the same page and talk openly about this?
Are there plans for the property that are specific at all?
Yeah, so you want me to speak to
Sure,
that?
absolutely.
Okay, so I'll just switch spots for a second.
Go ahead.
Okay, so also in your packets, thank you for asking that, Jim. You'll see they are pages 25 through 28 with my chicken scratch on there from the school board's request for proposal. The second page, those are just our highlights, shows the 3 parcels that are the school's property, showing the public road in the middle. So that's the existing property, and this is just a piece of their RFP, just so you know. The third page that shows the park detention basin, these are 2 examples that was included in their RFP. These are not from the developers that submitted proposals. What's confusing about this, and where we all got a little confused, is there's suggestion to it, and it said no fault. I don't fault the school board on this. I mean, their consultants are the ones who created this, right? But when they created it, they created lots right over the road as if it's a given that the village, it indicates that the village isn't going to have a problem giving that up, so go ahead and submit plans for 16, 17 houses, etc. Well, then you have a basin in the middle of it. Well, who's going to maintain that in the middle of houses surrounding it? And so we continually have all of these questions, and then, some of us looked up, and some of the others that are here in the audience tonight, some of us looked up the developers' other examples of homes that they've built. One of them, it's just your typical subdivision, and there's nothing wrong with subdivisions. They're all over the place. That's okay. But to drop a subdivision in the middle of a historic village would be an atrocity for the significance of the historic nature of our village. Imagine, if you will, even if you had a subdivision, if you live in a subdivision. How many of you live in a subdivision? We've lived in them before. Imagine if somebody wanted to put condos right across the street from your subdivision. You probably wouldn't be real thrilled about that if there was an empty lot. There are so many options. When you go to Royal Oak, there's this beautiful park with these tall trees, and it's limbed up and people can walk. Well, you can't get that back. We say once a green space is gone, it's gone. Well, true, unless you demolish a middle school. And then all of a sudden you have a property. Well, now we have this opportunity, and your master plan that you recommended to Village Council that was approved on October 6, 2022, states on several spaces that the Planning Commission recommends to Village Council changes within the village. So I'm excited that I have a copy, and thank you to Cindy for getting me a digital copy of the master plan today. I've looked at it before. I reviewed it as the DDA director because there's a lot in there for the Downtown Development Authority. So I have experience with your whole master plan, but to look at it through a different lens now that we're we're concerned about park space, Sisson Park on the end of Sisson, another park space, you can never get get that back. And if you read the quote at the end of page 2 from what we gave you, you'll see Joe Young, he's a Romeo alum, and he's also a PhD candidate at Michigan State University, and he makes some really good points there, and he's willing to come and also be at this community meeting. He was born and raised here, just like so many of the rest of you. So if you look at that, then if you look at the next individual sheet that just says Turtle Woods Preserve, this is just an example of a preserve that Six Rivers Land Conservancy is acquiring right now. When I called them on a whim, and they called back, and I said, you know what, this isn't even probably in your wheelhouse. And he goes, no, give me the address. So he pulled up the address, and he said, we're very interested in this project. So if you look, I contacted, and I promise I'll just be another minute, but the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, I have their minutes from their June board meeting from this year, and in there is their request for Oakland County Parks. They are joining forces. And bear in mind, this is a Troy Public School property, 78 acres. And village residents, much like what we're doing, said we do not want that property developed into subdivisions and whatnot. Six Rivers Land Conservancy got on board. They got Oakland County Parks involved, and they requested a 73% grant request with matching funds of only 27%. And guess how much the grant request from the state is? $3.2 million. This page is just full of it. And also, through the DNR, there are 22 recommendations. They did $15 million in acquisition grants. That's not to fix up a park. That's not to create a park. That was to acquire a park for an entity. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to create more green space in this village, and we are imploring you to please hear what we have to say. So.
Let me ask one more question.
Sure.
This is not a site plan in any sense, is it? It's more pie in the sky, we kind of like.
That is a suggestion from as I understand it, that is a suggestion from the consultants the school board hired when they included in their RFP package of what it could look like. And then we saw several of them, and some of them were quite interesting. And then, they didn't accept the first, something happened with the first one, and then the second one came to the July 24th meeting.
Okay, well, any comments from,
I've got a few.
okay?
So, as far as trying to slow a sale, I don't want to speak for the village as a whole, but they own it. They have fiduciary responsible for the property. And, I'm not an attorney, but I don't believe we can block them from doing anything as far as selling the property.
We're not asking you to.
No, and in putting a moratorium on it, I don't know how that would even work. It's not the village's. It's within the village boundaries. And, I've dealt with Six Rivers in the past. They've acquired bottom land where I work all over the place, but that was their original task, was finding wetlands to reclaim and keep. And it's not wetlands, but it's maybe, you never know who's gonna wanna step in and preserve it. But it's, as far as the street, it would go to the village through a vacation process, and it would be up to that board at that time, whether they would do that or not. It's an unimproved section. That's the only reason it could even be considered, is it's unimproved. So that you would talk to the village board about specifically if it's requested to be vacated, and if the school's not proceeding with it, then blocking it is almost impossible. The best way to go about it would be to make sure it's improved, and then it can't go away.
Village already owns it.
What's that?
Village owns it.
Absolutely.
I
It's on a plat. It's on a plat map from 100 years ago. It exists.
Yeah, it's, the village owns it now, so
Mhm.
when you vacate a public street, there's some pretty specific.
Hey, Bill, talk into the mic, you can't hear you.
When you vacate a village street, there's some legal specifics, and what happens is it goes to you divide it in the middle, and it goes to the people who own the property on either side. In this case, it's within a piece of property that's owned by the Romeo Community School District,
Both sides.
period. And then the whole, yeah.
There's been vacation processes in the past in the village, and they've always had to do with unimproved sections of either street or alley.
Actually, the village has in fact violated the state law and just vacated it for somebody before. I know that
It has to be
for a fact.
requested.
Pardon?
It has to be requested
Yeah,
by an adjoining property. So
yes.
it would be an action taken by the school board as the current owner to the village to vacate it.
Right, so just for clarity, that's why I put it in bold and had number 1 and number 2 on the first page. We're not asking for you to engage in a conversation with the school board, asking them to put a pause on it. We're asking, 1, to engage, to invite the school board and Macomb County, to recommend to Village Council to invite the school board and Macomb County and Six Rivers Land Conservancy, because they verbally have said, yes, please go to your planning commission and tell them we would love to be involved, if they will have us. But they won't get involved unless they get the invitation. We only want to have a discovery session so we can just talk about what could some possible reuses be, right? That's what we want to have, to alternate uses. Number 2, because President Poznansky has stated twice at a school board meeting on July 24th, and then also in the Macomb Daily article, that the village has no intention of vacating that space. That's the president, correct? But it still has to be a vote of the board. So we're asking for the board to say what their intentions are with that. So a future developer might say, well, if they have no intention of vacating that, I'm not even going to pursue that thing. Or if they are, we're concerned that this could end in some sort of a legal battle if the village doesn't give it up, or there's some sort of consent judgment or whatnot. You know, we want to make sure that we were asking the school board to take a pause, and we know, you know, the election happened and people changed and maybe some things got dropped along the way, maybe they didn't, but we became aware of it. Yes, the school has done, from what we can see, everything by the books, by law, as they are required to, but unless you're looking for it, you don't know where to look to see that this even happened in the fall. Does that make sense?
So, just one more, well, maybe 2. But Justin, sorry, you're on the council, so Megan is the street administrator, correct?
That's correct.
So I mean, if that's the only stance that matters, she is to be the one to initiate it to the council. So it's 1.
Okay.
If you request it and she says no, she's the street administrator. They are her streets. Through us, but she is the street administrator.
Okay, good to know. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yes. Just second, the detention basin throughout the middle, to have that amount of density, it would have to be a condominium of some sort, even a site condo, which means it would be responsibility of all the abutting owners. If they don't take care of it, it would default to taxes, and then the village would take care of it and fee them to fix it. That's how it works with the site condo.
So on the note regarding, was it the position with the street administrator? So fantastic, and we were very happy that President Poznansky came to the school board meeting to communicate the position, but we just wanted it to be more official, if you will. So there is no confusion for a prospective developer on the village's stance on that street. It was communicated during open comment at the school board, but if I remember correctly, that's not in the minutes anywhere.
I believe the village even staked the street.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes, they did,
staked
yeah,
it. So,
they
I mean,
did.
that's intent. You know,
Yeah, we have the most recent survey that was done in August, yes.
Yeah, I don't feel anything officially can be done at council saying, no, we don't plan on doing this, because in just over a year from now, it's gonna be a different board. It's gonna be a new council, and it could be requested at that time, or in 2 years or 3 years, to be vacated. It's gonna be depending who's sitting at the seat. So to say, you know, we all agree we don't have any intention of doing it at this point, it doesn't mean it can't happen in a year. Doesn't mean it can't happen in 2 years or 3 years. So there's really nothing that I feel that the council can do with that street.
The best way to prevent
except
it
for
is to make
maintain
it
it
exist.
and move forward, which I think.
For us to take a position on this, I would really be uncomfortable without having our attorney. There's a legal doctrine called inverse condemnation. And that means that some body, B-O-D-Y, takes an action which accidentally destroys value. The village of Romeo does not own the property. We all know that's the reason you're here. So if we took a position that accidentally took enormous value from the property, then the village of Romeo would be responsible for it. And I don't think that any of us want to, without having our attorney sitting here holding our hands, take on such responsibility. I think we all appreciate the fact you're here. Everybody understands how you feel about it. But after that, we can only just take note of the fact you're here.
So then we go back to the first item, which is, will you entertain having a community meeting where we can bring in the county and Six Rivers Land Conservancy. I would imagine it might even be at the invitation of the school board, to at least have a discovery session to see if anything passes muster, to see if something else can happen with the property.
Have you had a conversation with the owner, the school, about would they be willing to even take that step?
We've been in talks today and working on trying to figure that out. They know they don't have the votes to pass this right now as it sits. So I think we're in talks again, to try to figure that out. But without having some of the village involved in the opening of the RFP process and having questions answered through the process, they went ahead, as I understand it. And so from a village resident's standpoint, it's disappointing that we weren't at the table when those things happened. I don't know what the circumstances were. I'm not privy to that. But we as residents, community members, I mean, we're getting donations from people who don't even live in the village, that says, yes, we want you to get the word out. We want it, but we want the words that we put out to be correct. We're not showing up with pitchforks and torches. We want to say, please let us have a conversation with the county and Six Rivers Land Conservancy and possibly even the Department of Natural Resources to see what other viable options are there. This is Romeo's potential central park. And in an economic downturn, people say, yes, but we need revenue, we need revenue, we need revenue. How many people you think tried to grab Central Park in New York City over the last 152, however many years that park has been there? Probably a lot. I'm sure there's all kinds of stories of those things happening. And while it's unfortunate, some people didn't like that the middle school got demolished, but it did. It's gone now. But so now we have this opportunity, right? What do we do with that opportunity? And we want to leave this. If we plant trees there, if we plant 100 oak trees there, for example, we're never going to sit under the shade of those, but our kids will. Your kids might. So we're asking you we just want to have a conversation with everybody to be able to listen and hear what it is before it's too late. Did I touch on that enough, Franco?
I think you just understand the legal implications and tying hands and detracting value from the property. I think at this point it's just, we're requesting recommendation from this board to the village to collaborate with the school board. Open collaboration.
Well, no, I have an Invisalign that's brand new, so you have to bear
I've had to talk with those before. I understand your pain.
Anyway, so, as I understand it, the village has to make this invitation to Macomb County, is that correct?
Either board can do so. It has to be a governmental body. It cannot be a private group.
You said the school and a board
Yeah,
The
but
school
of the
is a
city, the
governmental-
council.
They
has
just
to.
want to know, so Jerry Santoro, I'm sure, you work at Macomb, I believe, so you might know, right? Oh, you're not? Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. He said, we just want to know that the entities are willing to talk about it. They don't want to show up and there's like people fighting in the room and whatnot. They want it to be a cohesive, actual study to understand what some viable options might be. And the county has, they said we have money to actually reforest a space like that if it were to move that direction. And we don't know, maybe that's not a viable option, but maybe we can just talk about it.
All right.
Jim,
Yes.
I guess my question is, why haven't you gone directly to the council and asked this question of them? Why come to us and have us send something to the council? It just seems it would be more expedient to go to the board and talk directly, to them rather than, I quite honestly, I am opposed to many houses being dumped on that piece of property, personally. And part of my job here is to make sure that doesn't happen. Because 'cause I can be a cranky old fart when I need to be. And I just think it would be more expedient for you to go directly to the council and say, basically, the same thing you're saying here. Go directly to the council, talk to, he's ugly, but he's a member of the council, but, you know. Some of the others are okay.
Did you want me to answer that, Bill?
No.
I,
No.
No, not the ugly part. No. No,
you know, remember, I'm the cranky old fart.
Bill, I've known you a long time. You're not cranky.
Yeah, I just, to me, yes, this sounds very methodical, maybe, but you want answers, and to me, the best place to get those answers is at a council meeting.
Why wouldn't
So to
you-
answer your question, oh, sorry.
Why wouldn't you approach the school board and ask them to be the sponsoring group? If they say they're not interested, you've already got your answer.
So last Monday, so there's a couple questions there that I heard. Bill, to Bill's question, you said, why didn't we go to village council first? Because your meeting, number one, was first. Last week, we went to the school board, and we heard Board President Eden Bonnick, who is here tonight, thank you. We're not the right body. You have to ask questions of your governing body. You go to them. I looked at the master plan on page 9. The second group, the role of boards and commissions. Planning Commission recommends policy relating to land use and is approving body for most development and redevelopment. Planning Commission is responsible for developing the master plan. Right above it, it says, a well-crafted and executed master plan will assist the community in making the right decisions to move the village forward and toward a more sustainable future. This is your all's master plan. You don't need me to read the whole thing, and we'd be here all night if I did.
Yeah, it's
But
kinda tough
over
to
and
look it
over
up.
and over again, it
Because
talks
it's already
about
been
that. Mm-hmm.
initiated, the master plan, the policies, the ordinances
Sure.
are already in. For us to go in now and say we want to change something or initiate something for just this one piece of property, I would feel it's kind of illegal, right?
No, we're not saying that, but there's so
Yeah, we
so
can't
many.
go in and change the master
Okay.
plan. We can't go in and say we're gonna change the density or the stuff just because this is happening right now. That would be, I feel would be a legal issue.
I don't think that's what we're advocating for, to change anything. We're just saying that
I don't feel anyone up here, and I don't feel anyone on the village board would have any issue with talking with anyone.
right.
If the school board's on board, I don't see anyone having an issue with, let's have a discussion, let's sit down, let's see how we can move this forward, maybe more palatable for everyone.
Thank you,
I don't
Justin.
feel that would be an issue.
Wonderful,
I
thank
don't-
you.
I'm not speaking for anyone, that's my feeling, but I don't see why anyone would not want to.
I guess my only concern is if the school board is not on board with it, I guess that would be a thing, is if, even if we say yes, that's great, but it's not our property to do anything with, and if they're saying, no, we're not willing to do that, then,
So the school board has voiced several times that they need to sell the property, and they can only do that in a manner that is currently reflective of how it's zoned. It's R1 zone, single-family housing. So even if we wanted to go ahead and try to make a green space, the school board's hands are tied because of how the property is zoned. So they've told
Parks
us,
are allowed in R1.
I'm sorry?
A park, a green space is allowed in R1, so there's nothing stopping.
Yes, we're not asking for a zoning change.
And we're not asking for that either.
Yeah.
We're just asking for collaboration. And to answer your question, sir, why didn't we just go to the council? And we absolutely can, we absolutely will. But we just felt it was more appropriate, given what the master plan says and who really controls the development of property or makes the recommendations to the council on the development of property in the village. It's this body right here. So we're just starting at the lowest level, and then we can go up to the council if needed, and we absolutely will. Just
The final word on property resides with the village council. We can only make recommendations. We write the master plan, which is a guide, it's not ordinance, you know, it's aspirational, let me put it that way. And, I mean, at this point, I would you should go to the council first. I think the board, or is it Macomb you want a liaison with, they would be, village has more power than we do over such things, you know. And I'm gonna remind people that, you know, that space is not just being thrown to the wolves. It's R1, and that has ordinances attached to it. You can't just put Trump Tower in there, you know. And anything that happens there has to come before us. We're the ones that review all the ordinance. So, I mean, my recommendation to you would be to go right to the village council and say, we wanna do this, but I would also say, if the board, if that school board is not interested, I don't know what you can do. We can't twist their arms from here, you know.
My last thing is I've dealt with Six Rivers a number of times professionally, and everything with them goes between a landowner and them as an intermediary with the county in which they're trying to purchase land and whoever it's gonna be turned over to. So as Jim was saying, the turnover would be to the village to maintain as a park. The school board is the other half. So it's, and I've dealt with them a number of times and it's never gone in front of planning at all. It's always just, hey, we want, this piece of land is up for sale. We're gonna step in and be the money. Do you wanna maintain this in the strict manner that we will allow? Is how they're gonna handle it, and it'll be deed restrictions all over it, which is how they handle everything, but it's, so, mentioning Six Rivers in the packet, I would go with the landowner and directly to the council and see if both sides will entertain it, and it's everybody was saying up here, I don't think a recommendation from us changes anything if they don't wanna liaise with them, cause that's it, I don't wanna say more on that.
Well, we thank you for your time, and there's other people here, since we're still in public forum, who might have some thoughts on that they want to speak, but I appreciate the 40-some minutes that you've allowed us to speak on this, and to be able to have this platform, and the school board as well. I mean, they're doing their jobs, you all are doing their jobs. Almost everyone in this room are volunteers in some capacity in this community, or we wouldn't be here. And we do appreciate your time, and thank you for your guidance, and since this is being televised, hopefully a lot of people will be able to see this and spread the word a little bit more as well. If you have any questions.
Well, I was gonna mention there's a record that you can, you know, access whenever you like, so,
The recording?
yes.
Yes, okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Jim, turn your mic on.
Oh, my mic is off.
He keeps pointing at me.
I just have one, Dale Wells, 273 Chandler. I think that what we're asking is your feelings on the property, because you're the planning commission. What kind of plans would you like to see that when we go to the village? Because they're gonna say, goes to the planning commission first and then comes to us. They have to make their recommendation. And I think that's maybe was a little bit missed. I think the issue of the road that's there, all that comes much later. We're just looking for some time now to try and see if we can add some green space. The numbers that I've looked at on our village, we have very, very little green space. And that's basically it, just buying a little bit of time to see if there's other alternatives. And if you feel that way, share it with the council, because we're gonna go there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, that's it for, whatever we just did, public forum. Item number 6, that has been eliminated because the public, or the,
Applicant?
yeah, they're not here. So 6 and 7 have been eliminated. So Karen, would you like to speak about off-street parking?
The village president reached out and asked if the planning commission could review the, off-street, parking ordinance for residential areas. Basically, she told me that what's been commonly understood in the village is if you have, like a camper or a recreational vehicle,
you can have it on your property, and it doesn't have to be in an enclosed space, but it just needs to be behind your house. She said that's been the common understanding. But then when they looked at the ordinance, basically it says, and you can see the diagram here, that the, no motor vehicle shall be kept or stored in any residential zoning district unless, it shall be in operating condition and properly licensed or located inside a building. No storage of motor vehicles or recreational vehicles may be allowed within the required front yard or the established building line, whichever is more restrictive, or the required side or rear yard. So technically, with that language, someone could have a camper or recreational vehicle stored in the driveway area visible from the street, as opposed to the commonly understood, it needs to be behind your house, not in the driveway. And so she asked that the planning commission review this and see if we want to update that language, because if not, then a RV or camper or something could be stored year-round in the driveway. Some communities do allow this, some other communities have language that says it has to be not visible from the street, so either behind your house or enclosed in a garage. A lot of communities are moving to have your recreational vehicles stored in a garage. However, these are communities with large lots and newer builds. So President's asking for some guidance on what we'd like to do for this.
In terms of what people are doing right now, are they grandfathered in no matter what we do?
Well, if we were to change and say, it has to be, well, I mean, I would say no, because it becomes a code enforcement thing. If you're storing something outside, you can't say, well, I've been storing this outside for the last 10 years, well, I'll let it go. It would be, no, you would have to start storing it wherever we make the change, if we decide to change anything. Well, I guess the understanding was it was more restrictive, but when we look at the language, it's slightly less restrictive.
It's perfectly obvious if you've walked around the village, there's dozens of people with motorhomes and campers that are sitting in their driveway. That's reality, period. I would make note of that and wonder why we're getting involved with it.
Because we were asked to look at it.
Okay, we're looking at it, and
He's
I
giving
can't see
an
any
opinion.
particular reason to make any change.
Neither do I.
Some of those properties too, it'd be impossible to move those things. You
Well, some of,
couldn't get-
the people have built pads out there, and they've been there since, and I'm not even sure what constitutes the word storage, but I know the house next to mine was built in the 50s, and the storage pad's been there since the 50s, and I think you'd have a hell of a time telling them that they can't park their cars or their motor vehicles there. Hey, you're not going back 70 years and say, well, you can't do it anymore. I mean, you could stand out in front and see some campers if you want. Just look up and down the streets. I'm personally opposed to any change in the,
So are we
What's
all in
going on?
agreement, we're not gonna take any action on this?
I would make a motion that we table this.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
I'll second. Mr. Webb, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, Cindy.
No. Billy said no.
Oh, it's no, you said no?
You don't want a table, or
You don't want to table it.
we're gonna bring this back, or are we?
You don't want a table? Okay.
Do something with it. I'm,
Yeah, tabling just means we're gonna put it on the
Yeah,
next
all right,
month.
well, that's true.
Yeah, that's,
So I'll make a motion that things remain as they are. How's
so
that?
there's no motion needed
Yeah.
then, we just
Yeah.
move on.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Everybody good with that?
No motion.
No motion, no nothing, okay. So next is, street parking. We eliminated that. 10 is capital improvement program workshop funding. That, Cindy, who wants to, you wanna tell us about that, or?
Well, the capital improvement program, is locked in for October 24th from 6 to 8:30, and it's going to be held in this room. And at this time, we've sent out 40 invites and received 16 confirmations. Most of those are from this board. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Asking the PC, this is from the president, asking the PC to approve an education expenditure for this training could be done in a not-to-exceed amount. Included are the PC budget and workshop estimates for reference. And if you turn the page, under education and training, I think it's highlighted in yellow.
4,000, yeah.
This is already set aside?
Pardon me?
It's already set aside for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Education and training under planning commission is for $4,000. And I believe what
1,200?
this,
Oh, 1891, 65, 50, 55.
That's for 25?
Roughly half.
I think.
I don't,
I don't see it.
what's that?
Workshop expenses.
The total for this workshop would be $1,891.55.
That's based on 25 people coming? 20, it says for handouts at 25?
Sent out 40 invites so far and received 16 confirmations.
And this is requesting up to 25?
And we also have another municipality that just reached out to Megan within the last couple of days that said they may be interested. I don't know if it was, what she said, New Haven or some other municipality that could possibly share the cost of that with us.
Cindy, you're requesting that we make a motion to
Not
spend up to X number of dollars for this project?
I guess my only question is,
Hasn't
I
it
mean,
already
this
been-
is falling on the planning commission. Should we be funding more than just sending the planning commission from this board? Just a question, and then if village council wants to send some of their members, should then village council be paying out of their educational
Well,
budget for
Justin,
that?
actually, I believe our budget prior to this
Yeah.
was 2,000, I believe she said, and then the village put in 2,000 to help cover the cost of this.
Understandable.
So,
Sounds good. I'll make a motion to approve up to $2,000, not to exceed $2,000 for the
Second.
workshop.
Second?
Mr. Hale seconded.
All right.
Mr. Parker made the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So-
Jim, since you're spending money, I think you're supposed to take a roll call on it. I hate to
Oh,
bore
You
you.
think that's true?
Yeah.
I know it is.
Yeah. Good call, good call, Bill.
You can't do it on a voice vote. You can't
Okay,
spend money.
then let's re-vote on the motion before us is to spend no more than $2,000
okay.
on the CIP education. Cindy, you wanna do roll call?
Fowler,
Yes.
Grandstaff,
Yes.
Hale,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Minton,
Yes.
Parker, Bill Parker,
Yes.
Justin Parker,
Yes.
Stegner,
Yes.
Webb,
Yes.
okay.
Unanimously carries.
Yep.
Okay. All right, old business, permitted uses in the CBD revisited. Comments? You have anything to say?
Comments, yeah. I know, I see some things changed in red. So a couple things popped into my head was, I think we need to establish, because it talks about the seasonal seating, and there's nothing defined what that season is. You know, if we're gonna have outdoor seating that has to come down during certain seasons, well, what is it? Is it winter, is it summer? So I think we need to look at a definition for the seasonal outdoor seating or a date. And then also, number 1 in there in section 3 talks about the 5-foot clearance on the sidewalk. Should that be defined as basically, should the seating be attached to the establishment or detached? Like we're seeing both now, and does it make a difference? I don't know. That's a question that popped into my head. Because you've got to maintain a 5-foot clearance, and you got seating up against your building, you got seating up against the curb, you're not gonna maintain 5 feet. So do we define it, you know, where it's located?
This is yours.
And then I would go as far as questioning, is it something that it, at no charge, all right? It would be the other question that was raised from other people in the community that I am bringing to this board.
I see where it says seating in the alley or rear of the building is prohibited. I see where it says seating in the alley or the rear of the building is prohibited. Currently, we do have a dining establishment that does have seating in the alley, and I think it's a better use of the alley than just letting the leaves blow through it.
I would change that to active alley for like traffic.
I agree,
If it's a sidewalk,
right.
because we have one active alley off of Main,
That's correct.
and the rest are just walkways.
They've been, what's the proper word, Cindy? They haven't been vacated, they've just been closed.
Right, they are closed.
So it would be seating in an active alley or use thereof is not allowed, but it certainly would be allowed in the closed in the closed alleys.
Right, you can't get hit by a car.
I mean, if they wanna, if the Starkweather people wanna put some art out there and sell it, I have no problem with that.
Right.
And if
It's a
John wants to
conversation.
have people sit around drinking coffee in the shade there, what's the problem?
It's a conversation between neighbors of
Yeah.
a closed alley at that point to me.
I guess it would still, if it's not a private alley, it's public, and if
It
you're gonna
is.
restrict it'd still have to maintain the 5-foot clearance, no matter where you put that seat. And it still would have to be within your business front or side front, if you wanna call it, along that alley.
Well, what you're saying is that you shouldn't, you can't just slop over into your neighbor's frontage. I don't think we have a problem with that. If you're gonna do stuff in front of your own building, that's fine, but you really shouldn't be elbowing into your neighbor's property.
Yeah, I would just question, I agree, I don't see an issue with the seats in the alley, but if you don't have proper clearance to get through the alley, when you have people sitting around the table, then that becomes a
Right.
hazard.
It's a sidewalk, you can't block the entire sidewalk.
Exactly. Yeah.
You got a seating, one restaurant right now has seating in the rear of the building in what would be a public alley. And I can't see that it's caused anybody any particular problem.
I think that was vacated, wasn't it?
Might have been,
Are
but
we talking?
you still got, it says here you can't have seating in the rear
Yeah,
of the
the
building.
southwest
Well,
rear was vacated.
That's,
Yeah. So that's not
that's
public property anymore.
That's the only,
That's
that's the
their
only
own
one I can
property.
think of without effect.
seating in the alley or the rear of the building is prohibited.
So
So
I
it's
guess
the rear
the
of their
definition
building.
of that,
We
I
shouldn't be
understand.
saying that.
but it's
Okay.
it's in outdoor or merchandise
No,
sales.
but-
I guess it needs to be defined then as, if it's your property, we can't restrict how you, you know, that it's there. If it's our property, that's different.
I put flowers behind mine.
Well, it's your property.
You darn right it is.
Well, I think that's the main issue of why we're looking at this, is that the front sidewalk or the alley, a lot of these businesses are village property. And so I believe those are the concerns that was brought up by the clerk of, they can get a permit for seating in the front, and they do have to provide a plan, and part of that plan is to show that they're gonna provide the proper right-of-way so people can get through. We're supposed to stick with that plan. I think an issue is, we have specified you can have seating in the front, but we didn't have, there is currently no language saying you can't have seating in the back, so there have been concerns with some businesses putting seating in the back, on,
Public space.
public space, and so we're trying to figure out how do we wanna move forward with that.
Why don't you open it all to approval?
What was that?
Why don't you open it all to approval? Alleys, you have to get approval. Rear, you have to get approval. It's seasonal, you only need to apply once unless you make major changes.
That would still
Yeah,
question.
The bars
You know,
don't
It's
reapply.
gotta come down, there's gotta be a season, right? Why has it come down?
Well, the-
Snow removal.
The removable parts have to come out, but like the railings they screw into the sidewalks, those don't leave.
They used to.
They don't
Once upon a
anymore,
time.
Justin.
What?
They don't.
They used to.
They used to.
They
Yeah.
don't.
They used to have to clear them for snow, but that hasn't happened in, I don't even remember.
Years, yeah.
So, essentially, I think we're saying we don't have a problem in the closed alleys.
Okay.
And if we are in agreement on that, okay, then
I am.
our problem would be, our concern level would be that if somebody wanted to do something in an active alley. You know, that has happened in that active alley.
But it was temporarily closed,
Correct. And now it's back open, so therefore it's
no longer usable.
It's no longer being used, although I'm not quite sure where the property line is there.
Right on the wall.
I think there's some flowers in the way.
Not sure about that. Okay,
Who has tables behind their building, Youngers?
Yeah,
yeah.
yes.
But that's on their property, their balcony, their patio.
That's their property.
Yeah.
I think it is, but I don't,
Yeah, but you're saying, what this says is you can't do that, and so.
can't have anything to rear
you-
the building.
You need to clarify what,
Yeah, what
what's
rear of
being
the
said
building,
here.
yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Rear of the building if it's in public, right? I think it needs to define if it's in.
Karen, in your experience, do other communities charge for the use?
I'd say a lot do. But I mean, it really is community, it's up to the community what they'd like to do. The benefit of not charging is it does encourage businesses to be creative and it's less of a barrier for them if they do wanna have that outdoor seating, which I think a lot of people do find attractive. It brightens up the streetscape, but, yeah.
We done with this?
Does it make sense to talk about attached or detached and keep it uniform? Or do you just leave it simply as long as you're maintaining the 5 feet required?
Right now, I mean, this is how it is. I don't know, I know the clerk, ultimately, she reviews the plans. I don't know if she has a certain checklist or, criteria worksheet that she works off of to determine whether, it'll work. I can ask her and see if maybe we can get a bit more details on what is involved in the process. And so then the planning commission can decide if we wanna codify that in the ordinance so that people might be more aware of what they can and cannot do.
And then if we're not gonna make them take it down, do we even, why even have a
The word
seasonal?
seasonal?
Right,
Agreed.
because
Just clean it
what
up.
does that mean, right, at that point?
There are communities where people have igloos.
Igloos and stuff
And
like
it's
that,
become quite popular to sit in your igloo and drink.
or
And
eat,
then look in the snow or eat.
or eat dinner.
So I really would agree with you about,
Yeah.
it's for real.
No, I'm not, that's why I'm questioning.
It helps, it helps the businesses prolong their season. I don't have a problem with that.
Then why
It was too many
restrict the
years
rear
ago that
use?
They were taking them down every year. Cause I remember, I think it was, maybe it was Marion, right? Marion was out measuring.
Yeah.
When they went up. So maybe that was a few years ago. And Mike, yeah.
I used to go out with her. And what we would do is we'd measure to make sure there'd be enough pedestrian clearance, and they'd take them down after the season, and they'd come back, we'd go back out and do a remeasure again and give them permission. There would be, I remember it was first one, I think was Office Pub and then Youngers. Then we went across to the sushi place, I think it was
Right.
to measure for him. And they used to go away come, fall.
Well, I
And
guess
that's been years.
my question is why don't they still, if they're supposed to?
I don't know, I mean, I used to
That's
go
not
out
on
with
me.
the shoot, say, Mike, we gotta go for a walk.
Just in case anyone, he is our building official. Just in case anyone wants to know why he's talking from the audience, I apologize, but yeah, he's our building official, sorry.
I'll make a motion that we accept with the additions you have made, is added to the ordinances?
I'd like to,
Am
I'd like to specify that it only has to be an active alley. That's my only difference with you.
Why don't we see it in writing before we?
Yeah,
I'd like to see what we finally vote on, because sometimes
things
a
change.
change of a comma or a word.
Okay,
So I'm really uncomfortable voting on something
it's fair.
where I don't know exactly, because we're gonna talk about the flagpole soon, and I have real issues with the wording there.
So we're talking active alleys, defining parking in the rear, or seating in the rear of the building. Seasonal, should that be questioned or not? I don't know.
Do you want to speak to removal of these things? Should it
Or
be in
do
here
we
that they
just
have to be
remove
removed?
seasonal and just allow
Or just leave
outdoor
it?
seating, as long as it maintains the 5 foot
Yeah.
within your business front?
Why don't we give her
Yeah,
some,
you have to
take a
define what
straw vote
seasonal
and give
means.
her some direction?
I'm all for removing seasonal.
Or on these individual items.
Can we do it like an all in favor of seating in the rear? I don't know, Jim, that would be your,
Well, I mean,
Individual.
sure. Do we gotta make a motion on it? I
No,
mean,
I'm saying we can, let's try and give our planner some,
guidance,
a sense of
From
where
where-
we're at. I mean,
not that you need our
there
guidance.
doesn't seem to
what we
be
look-
any disagreement about the fact that we should be addressing closed versus active alleys, and I think that we're all communicating together on that. And I'm not sure that there's any disagreement on, seating in the rear or seating in,
Seasonal.
yeah, no, we're,
so.
I'm not really sure.
Seasonal,
Seasonal, I would say, just take the word out. Sorry, igloos,
Yeah.
this has become a really popular thing that people are doing.
Mhm.
And I can't see what the problem with it would be. So that would be my sense, but I can't say that the rest of the board's agreeing with her. And before she attempts to address this in the next rewrite on this, let's give her some direction, Jim. That's what I'm
Okay.
suggesting. I'm babbling.
I think we have consensus that seasoning should be out,
Right, okay.
so you can have your Spanish coffee and a cigarette.
In the middle of winter.
Well,
Frozen
Well, I
vodka
don't
means
have-
frozen vodka, and if you wanna drink frozen vodka.
Active alleys only, active alleys only are restricted.
Right.
Within, I mean,
Yeah.
well, you have to maintain the 5 foot, as Justin said.
5 foot, but does that need to be defined? Is that 5 foot between the fence and the tree, 5 foot between the fence and the
5 foot
curb?
open- 5
5
foot
foot
open
against the
sidewalk.
curb or the second curb if you're going to the north section of town? I think that should be defined. Because if you got a tree that's right in the middle of your 5 foot,
I mean,
that's taking up 2 foot.
Is there 5 foot open where the lattice work is installed at the very front of that alley on either side? Nope. There's an arch in concrete right in front of that alley, which is what that table's behind. That's why it's those people, I'm just asking,
Yeah.
because it's already restricted because of the arch.
Mhm.
And that arch is on the southeast alley too, right? Or did they take it out? It was there. There's an art installation that is in that alley, so that's
Starkweather
Lines.
Alley, are you talking
No,
about?
no,
Starting
no,
with
the-
both. There's
the-
one by next to
I
the
didn't,
sushi
I
place
wouldn't
and the
even
one on
question the
Northwest
width
corner.
of
There's
the
our.
Starkweather Alley, if it's not much over 5 foot as is.
No, and the sushi one isn't either.
Yeah, so I mean, it's concerning, you don't want people stepping into the street
Right.
to get around, because you got people coming this way, people coming that way, you got a tree, you got this, you got a sign. It's crowded.
Yeah.
Someone steps into the street, that's what this is here to protect.
Bill did make a motion. I don't know that I ever heard anyone second it.
Are we gonna continue with that motion? I thought you were arguing against the motion.
I
Bill
think,
Park.
If the motion doesn't get a second, it dies.
There was no second, but I
Alright.
would point out the fact there's a motion on the floor.
Yeah, there's no second, so it dies.
so it's dead, I understand. I just would like to say, let her make the changes, the ramblings that we have had, and bring it to us next month, and they'll beat the crap out of it again.
That's right.
And
It's fun.
how many months have we looked at this, you know?
This is month 2,
Just two.
just 2.
Flagpole.
Slow roll.
Do you have any questions?
No,
about
I'm,
this issue?
not at the moment. I am going to say, though, I will, these are changes that are brought about by concerns of the clerk. And so I will also be speaking to her about these changes. I'll make them. I may provide extra comments that she has for the planning commission to consider.
Would we consider a fee? Just putting it out there. She said other people have done it, most community, is it a lot of them, or
I would say most communities probably do.
do charge something?
Yeah.
And then that funds can be used to maintain the sidewalks in the downtown area moving forward.
That's what the DDA's for. They already pay separate tax for that.
Justin, I'd be opposed
Yeah,
to the
and-
fee.
Would you
I'm
care
just-
to
I'm just
name
putting it
some
out
of these
there, yeah.
communities?
Much sense out there.
Names in it, well, I know, I mean, we're talking about bigger communities like Royal Oak, Ferndale, and my community, Grosse Pointe Park, all the points, I know they do it. I mean, most people, when they do this outdoor seating thing, they're going through a bit more of a site plan process, so someone has to review it, there's fees attached to that. But I'd say most downtown communities do, at least the ones that I've had some experience in. It might not be
Based on
much,
her
some might
examples,
charge a lot, it might be very minimal, but,
I guess, is that something you could bring back, like an idea if the clerk has any interest in entertaining a fee involved? Or
yeah, I can ask her, I can tell her that was brought up.
Based on your
And maybe some examples
I'd be
of-
opposed to that. I mean, Royal Oak, they can ask anything,
Yeah,
and the points, you know,
Same with Ferndale, Wood Park.
yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, I mean, these are, larger, more urban downtowns, but, I can look into other comparable communities and their Main Street programs and what they do.
Some examples of
Thank you.
how they, what they charge or how they charge. Is it per storefront? Is it per how many indoor seats you have, how many outdoor seats you want,
Right.
how they break that down? Yeah.
So would that be for new businesses
Yes.
only?
No,
Well, yeah, I guess it's.
So you would
business.
go through the whole downtown?
I would give a
And
grace period, and then whatever calendar year, whatever that is, then.
Well, with
Initiated.
with this, basically, if you get if you're proposing outdoor seating, it's a one-time review currently, and as long as you're not making substantial changes, it's considered renewed automatic.
Yeah.
So would the clerk, if we were to entertain a fee, would it be an annual fee to have outdoor seating? Would it just be the one time for when you
I guess
submit
that's
your
what we'd
plan?
like to see what other,
Yeah.
what you bring back on other
Yeah.
communities.
Okay, let's move on to everybody's favorite, the flagpole language update.
So I've provided,
Skip the fence? I'm
oh,
sorry.
fences?
Skip the fence.
Okay.
Fence, let's do fence.
So based off of last month's meeting, there were two items that we wanted to address. One was a question about, or the issue about corner clearance, where on page 4, item number 2, it currently states, no obscuring fence except those established and maintained by the village, county, state, or federal government shall be located within a triangle formed by the intersection of any road right-of-ways / easements and or access drives or pedestrian walks at points of 20 feet distance from the point of their intersection. And at the last meeting, we came to agreement that it should just be no fence as opposed to no obscuring fence. So we're removing the word obscuring. And then the second item that was brought up was that the way the ordinance is currently written, if you are on a corner property and your exterior side yard that faces the street, the way the ordinance is written, you are allowed to have a 6-foot privacy fence on the exterior side our side yard facing the street. And there have been some safety concerns. Some communities allow 4-foot fences. So we're asking the planning commission, do we want to keep the ordinance as written? Or do we want to consider having a 4-foot fence on the exterior side yard of a corner property?
So my initial thought is if it's past that 20 feet behind the front on the side, I don't see why a 6-foot would be an issue. As long as it's not within that corner clearance behind the established main front, I don't see an issue, as long as you're maintaining that 20 feet. From, is that sidewalk or is that curb?
Well, it depends what's situated on your property, correct?
Yeah.
Do we mind
Yeah.
if Mike talks?
Yes.
Okay.
That way they can point a camera at you.
She's the one that's interpreting
Yeah.
it, enforcing it.
Get some camera time.
Thank you. Mike Bomrito, building official, and I've been having a lot of problems, trying to decipher that setback, the way the ordinance is written, along these corner lots. And there's language in our ordinance, when you're on a corner lot, you follow the same front yard setback on both corners. So you'd say, just say a front yard setback for a house is 25 foot, you'd be 25 foot on that side for house also, your setback. You follow the 2 front yard setback. We all have that pretty clear. The thing is that there's language, there's a disconnect where the fence, you can't put a privacy fence in a front yard. It has to, at all. But when you come up that side yard on the other side, the way it's written now, it doesn't say it has to be that 25-foot back, like the ordinance, the intent is. So if you come to that other side, and you went 25 foot back and say that's the corner of the house, from that portion back to the rear, you should be able to put the privacy fence. The problem, we have some that are right up to the front of the house, they come off the front of the house, then run right down that sidewalk with the privacy only a foot in. And there's nothing we could do to have them lowered or anything because it doesn't have the same language for the fence as it does for the front yard setbacks on 2 sides, and I think Karen can help clarify that a little better.
So Mike, I'm gonna
Yeah.
ask, so if my house sits 25 foot back from my main road,
Right.
so I'm come 25 feet in front of my house,
Mm-hmm.
you're saying you don't want a privacy fence to come out, maintain the 1 foot clearance it needs to from the sidewalk, and run down my side yard?
Well, you're only, you're gonna have a privacy, let's just say you're on, Fremont, okay, you're coming down the street there and it's a front yard setback, you come to the corner, the privacy fence would start 25 foot back, but then it can run along the sidewalk
Yeah.
with privacy, where normally if it would follow the same setbacks as a corner clearance that you use on 2 sides, it would have to be back to 25 also in line with that house going to the rear yard.
Yeah, but if the side of your house isn't 25 foot from the street,
Well,
Because
and there's several of them that aren't, they're non-conforming, because, if you were to build that house
exactly.
now, you'd have to have 25. Let's say you have one that's
So do you see an
15.
issue with that fence running down that Fremont
Right,
and St. Clair, north or southwest house, right? Coming out, going down the sidewalk, if it doesn't encroach onto the clearance from the corner.
yeah, and that's the other thing, the corner clearance is already there, thank God, because when you come to a corner, they have to maintain the 20/20 clear vision from
20/20,
streets or corners. I guess it's up to how the planning commission wants to vote on that side yard still being, the front yard. There's one I could tell you right now, it's on Ewell, I think it's at the corner of Clyde, and the front yard, house is 25 foot back, and on the side yard, it's around 20 foot to that side yard of the house. The thing is, they brought the privacy fence off the driveway, that goes like a side-load driveway there, and they came a foot down, all the way to the front of the house, where I think the intent of the ordinance was to have that all the way to the side of that house, then go to the back. Right now, it is in violation. They have a driveway there, and it's not meeting the 2020, and they said they're gonna cut that angle out of there. Give them time to do that, because that's an obstruction to the 2020 clear vision.
Right. So it's, I mean, my whole thing is like, I totally understand the safety avenue angle, but I don't understand why the privacy angle is an issue. I understand not having a dwelling, a two-story structure against the road, because it's not commercial. But why were we trying to obstruct a fence for privacy in a yard because that person's unlucky enough to live on a side street?
On a side, and I'm not to
No,
give an
and I get
opinion,
it's
I
not-
just
it's not
need to know,
personal,
right,
but
no,
it's-
and I just need to know, you know, when I'm going out there doing the fence, there being that there's a kind of a disconnect
Right.
there, I need to know how to enforce it. And that's why I'm here tonight, was because the fence has become a major issue for me. I mean, I go to residents' houses and, they'll have a driveway, and I tell them, you gotta be the 25, and then the other direction, 25, and cut it on an angle.
25 or 20, Mike?
I'm sorry, 20 foot, I'm correct myself, it's 20/20 for the clear vision. As far as privacy, that's up to however the planning commission wants to, you know, if they want to keep it the way it's written, the way it is currently, you could have that in that side yard, 1 foot in from the property line, in that side yard, you might want to call, but it's even though you follow 2 front yard setbacks on corner lots. So if they want to keep that language the way it is, I have no problem, but I need to know, because there was kind of a disconnect in there.
So if it was the 20/20 from any approach or corner, there, you don't feel there's any safety issue then?
No, there's no
If it's-
safety
If it's
issue.
4 foot or 6 foot, it doesn't matter.
Right. Once you got your 20/20, however, I do feel that they should have that kept in the ordinance as far as the clear vision. Almost every municipality you go to now has that language with 20/20 off of intersections, corners, driveways.
As long as it doesn't encroach into the main front.
Right. Well, yeah, as long as you're not coming past the front of the house, it stops at the front of the house.
Right.
On that main front.
The true front.
But then, like you say, when you come to that side yard, yeah, and what do you do when you got a limited, amount of property, and you're not in violation of any public safety? Well, yeah, you should be able to get some privacy there if that's what you choose.
Without having to pay $1,000 and go in front of the zoning board.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm here tonight, to try to, you know, just, it's kind of been
far as
difficult in the last year for me to do it.
Vegetation, anything
Right,
shouldn't be, that all falls into this, correct?
right.
You just need to obtain a survey now to be able to get a 6-foot fence. And after you obtain the survey, it's $250 for your permit prior to building.
But it's better than
Has the
250
survey always
plus
been
1,000.
part of it?
Pardon?
Have we always had the survey in there?
That came into play a few years back where they said if you want a privacy fence, they put in the ordinance where you had to get a survey. I don't quite understand it because I don't know of any other community that makes you get a survey because you're putting in a privacy fence. It becomes a civil issue. If we issue a permit, and again, I'm not the lawyers or nothing, but my experience for years is I pull a permit for a fence and I put it in the wrong location. That's civil. It goes to court, the townships, the cities, the village, whatever. They do not get involved. There's several cases out there where people have put them on the, you know, thought they had it on the property line. The neighbor says, no, I didn't. One gets a survey, they go to court and they have them move it. But then that's just, I don't know, if they want to keep that, having to get a survey because it's a privacy fence. I mean, we're not doing it, if it's a 4-foot fence and you put it on the property line, there's no survey required.
Yeah, so it would make,
It-
if
to-
you're gonna do it for every fence.
That's what I'm saying,
or
it doesn't make
do
sense
it
to
for
me the
none.
way it
That
is
doesn't make
written
sense.
now.
Maybe having
We don't make the decision.
something signed by a neighbor if you're putting up something over 4
Council
foot.
wants to be-
It used to be a sign-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would take all the time saying, yes, they have our permission.
there was the ordinance, that's the way it used to read. In order to put a privacy fence in along a side yard, you had to get your neighbor's permission and put the finished side towards them. Then if you get a survey, you didn't need to get permission, you get a survey for privacy, but then, to me, it's not making sense, because I put a 4-foot in, and say I put it in wrong, it doesn't become a village problem. It always goes civil between the two property owners.
Agreed.
Yeah.
But it's the council
survey
issue.
is-
Are we, what
That's the first
changes
issue.
are we looking at in here?
So the obscuring
Is there a
fence and the
change
side yard.
needed for the corner lot with the 2020 6-foot allowed?
Karen?
If we want to treat the exterior side yard not the same as so basically, almost everywhere else in the ordinance, if you're on a corner lot, any part of your property that's facing the street is just treated as a front yard, except for a fence ordinance, that language is not there. So if we leave it as is, you can still have that 6-foot privacy fence just a foot away from from the sidewalk. You don't need to have that, whatever the length of for front yard setback, is it 25 feet? I think.
Right. For the front yard, right.
For just the front yard setback. But the way the ordinance is written, that's not there, so all you have to do, so you're allowed to have a 6-foot privacy fence just a foot away from the sidewalk. It could be, you could have a 10-yard setback, depending on how your property's set up, I don't know, from this, the right of way. We want clarification because almost everywhere else in the ordinance, corner properties are treated differently, but the way the language is in the offense ordinance, that's not the case, and so we're just, like Mike said, we're trying to figure out clarification on.
So what we have in front of us doesn't have the 2020
It
does.
setback rule?
It says 20.
It has that.
It has
But-
that.
But it does allow for 6-foot fences on corner lots to go out to the side street.
Corner clearance is there. It's just
Right.
side
This-
yards,
this is
side
good.
exterior side yards are just not treated, or it's just, there's no language that says your exterior side yards follows your front yard setbacks, that language is not there.
Right.
It's on there for, if you're building if you're building a home or building a building on a corner lot, that language is always there. The only time it's not is in our fence ordinance right now.
Right.
So we're just trying to.
So what we have in front of us does not have,
A restriction for 6-foot fences on a corner lot going towards that side street. That's not there.
and there's, and
We're good with that. Well, I am.
okay.
Yeah, as long as
Yeah.
it's maintaining the 2020 on
Right.
everything
If we're
listed here,
maintaining it 2020,
walkways, driveways.
why are we discussing this?
Approaches.
So I think we're set with this, we just need to make a motion to pass it, right?
No, we need to make a motion to recommend council
Yes.
to change the obscuring,
change the-
right? That's the only change we're looking at this point?
Just remove the word obscuring.
That's the only written change in there. Planning commission, needs to make, or decide if they want to make any other language changes for clarification.
I'd like to make a motion to just remove the word obscuring as presented.
I'll second it.
Second,
To send to council.
To send to the village council, yes, just a recommendation.
motion before us is to recommend to the council that we accept this language with the change of removing the word obscuring. That's the
Yep.
motion before us.
And Mike, you're satisfied that this?
Yeah, the only other thing is, I was gonna ask is if you were, still asking for the survey of these,
No.
we don't ask them on the 4-footer, are we gonna keep asking them on the 6-footer, so
No, I would also want to.
that's gonna be another,
Is that in here? I don't even think it's in here. I think it's
That's
just.
just in our
I think
permitting
it's in
process.
a-
I think it's just the clerk requests it.
Well,
But that has to be, I
No,
mean,
we're
and that's where the
saying no,
disconnects are coming in, because it's not written in one spot, then it's in another, and I don't know.
Why don't we clarify and say that no survey would be required, or what would we do?
Where is it required? Who requires it where? Is that just at the village, Cindy?
Yes.
It's Cindy, she's so mean.
I mean, can we recommend they change that, a village policy for permitting?
Sure. They don't have to
We can ask.
pay any attention to us, but I can't see why we can't.
It could be a whole
Request
separate
it.
motion.
It's gonna be on our agenda anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only other thing is, like Karen was mentioning, you know, everywhere else in the ordinance where it says buildings, that also would pertain to accessory structures. That's, would follow the same corner clearances, so you don't have one sitting right out in the front there. That's in pools and other things. The only one that was different was the fences weren't clear, so that's why we're here.
It applies to plants
Yeah.
and everything in the clear
So
corner.
we've got a motion to approve,
Recommend to council.
to recommend to the council this with,
Fencing language with the removal of the word
Obscuring.
obscuring.
okay, and then on a second
It is
issue,
in
we
there.
would,
Yeah, it is.
It is in here. It's under section 6194,
What is?
under responsibilities.
the mortgage survey.
So you wanna strike that?
Say it again?
694,
On
page
page
5, section 6194A.
Oh, yeah.
I see it, there it is.
and we'd like to see that stricken.
Cool, striking everything from applicant's defense and just leaving it the village is not responsible.
Would you like to reword your motion?
I would. Thank you for finding it.
Or would we like to
All?
see this drafted and presented then with changes next month before
Same
it
as
goes
the
to
other one?
council?
Is that what you would like, sir?
I'm-
I'd like to rescind my
It's your motion.
I agree with Justin. I think we want
Yeah.
to see the final verbiage so that there's any commas or changes or mistakes
Okay.
or accidental transcriptions, then we can do that.
For next month, for
Okay,
Karen.
so
Yes, please.
I'm gonna rescind my motion. My apologies. So, and then for, as far as 6194 responsibilities, section A, I would recommend that we strike from first sentence applicants all the way through it to the word fence to the first period. And then at the end of that section A, or the accuracy of submitted survey. I would like to strike all of that. Change the comma to a period.
We're talking about this right in here. To
Talking
eliminate
about a
the whole
survey
thing about the
required.
survey.
So it
That
should
costs a
end
few
at fence,
$1,000.
period.
You're not gonna need a surveyor out there for $1,000.
That way, it just says, "The Village of Romeo shall not be responsible for the enforcement of any agreement between property owners in respect to fences, nor shall the village be responsible for the determination of the location of any fence." Period.
Agreed.
And just remove the word survey from everything.
Well, did we,
So is
now
that?
you got agreement between homeowners.
All right.
and not
Not gonna go to flagpoles.
change hands.
Mike, does that
Well,
take care of
back to,
what you?
That's why they won't enforce it, right? That's why the village is absolving themselves from enforcing an agreement between owners, which they shouldn't anyway, it's a civil matter.
Correct.
It's every city I've ever been in, it's a
Right,
civil
it's a
matter
civil
with
matter.
fences. If I put one in, I get my fence permit, I put it in the wrong location, they will not get involved, and they'll just tell you, civil issue, I or whoever the neighbor was, we'd have to, you know,
When you get,
one or the other is gonna end up getting a survey, going to court, filing a suit, and then the judge, and I've seen it happen where they have put one, there was one on Gates, where it was put in wrong, and, the fence company, they said it's the first time in 25 years that they placed one, and,
that's what they all say.
the person, the resident took the other one to court after they got a survey, and sure enough, it was on her property, and they took it to the district court here, and they had to move it.
Perfect.
It had nothing to do with the village having any liability.
So did you see all that,
When you
Mrs.
get
Karen?
old communities.
Did you see all the strike?
Okay.
And,
And
I'll give you mine.
Andrew made that motion.
I rescinded it.
yeah.
So
no
we just need,
motion before.
we need to see corrections before we vote.
See corrections, okay.
So everything's clear to Karen, I assume.
Is everybody good with that?
Phenomenal with it.
Yeah. All right, good. We get to move on to
It's like,
our last item, which is the flagpole language update.
Thank you, Mike.
thank you, appreciate it.
So I've drafted a revised version of the proposed language for flagpoles. At the last meeting, it was requested to allow provision that would permit flagpoles to be placed in the side or rear yard where the height would exceed the setbacks from the side or rear property line upon permission of the neighboring property. As I was drafting it, I will have to ask the planning commission for guidance on what exact language they would like. The purpose of us bringing up this proposed language was not only to offer guidance to the community if someone wanted to put up a flagpole, but also to uphold safety in case it fell. And I had some issues putting that in there. I feel that if we're allowing language that would allow the flagpole to fall into someone's property, potentially, that would create a conflict. So that was my opinion, but if we do want to move forward and add it in there, we can add some language. And also at the last meeting, an attendee brought up item number 8, American flags flown must be illuminated. I'm sorry, it should say illuminated at night. They said, that's flag etiquette. Do we really want to make that a provision? So I'm just bringing that back to the council to consider that as well. I mean, commission as well.
Good.
Well, for me, for number 8, I like that it's illuminated, but again, I think that's more of a, you could be making a statement by not illuminating. And I don't wanna trample on anyone's right to make that statement.
And then you have to enforce it. And the village doesn't work at night.
Right.
That's true.
True.
I didn't,
In number 8.
yeah,
What they're saying is that really this is a matter of a personal decision whether or not to
Yeah.
have it illuminated. And I think particularly from my own point of view, in a residential district, it might be actually quite annoying to have it illuminated, but, those aren't my main objections, I just have others.
no, if you're
List of
gonna have the
grievances.
flag up all night, it should be illuminated. I'll
If you have
work on
enough
that word over
cars,
the weekend.
Pardon?
if you have enough cars in your driveway, people might think you're a dealership.
Not going there. I have Jim, can I have a couple of comments here?
Sure, absolutely.
Lord knows you're interested in my comments on this. In sentences, items 4 and 5 on page 2, it says, quote, "A maximum of 1 freestanding flagpole may be permitted in residential and CBD districts with a maximum height of 20 feet." That sentence says that you can have 1 flagpole in each of those districts. It does not say you can have 1 flagpole on each individual property or parcel or tax ID parcel.
Oh, you're right.
and
I'm sorry.
I don't know how you do this. And I would then say you need to clarify on the next sentence the same thing, because
Per parcel.
there's only gonna be 3 flagpoles in the whole of the rest of those districts. So we need to, again, before we go any further, get some clarification language in there that says what we wanna say.
So how about 1 freestanding flagpole may be permitted on,
Per address.
well, 1 flagpole may be
Per parcel.
permitted on a parcel in residential and CBD districts with a maximum height of 20 feet.
Or then, how many are you gonna stab in the front yard on Prospect in front of the co-op? 40?
Well, they have their own,
They have their own
Internal.
requirements down there.
Yeah, but still, per address. You're asking for a multiple living home to stab 4 into the ground.
I also have, because I hate this whole ordinance, let's just be honest about it. Mike, you're gonna go around and measure these flags. Who's going to enforce this thing?
Not Mike.
I didn't figure Mike was, and I'm not, and it's more of a, let's get
Would be
real
involved.
about who's going to enforce this.
It would probably fall under the code enforcement,
Which would,
police department.
it'd be them and partly me too.
Yeah.
It's gotta be somebody who knows trigonometry, right?
I mean, we understand the absurdity of an overly large flag, which may or may not have been flying in the village, and the real issue is one of, is an engineering issue. What in hell will that flagpole withstand?
Well, that was the next thing, I was gonna go up to the podium.
Well, Mike, get yourself up there and tell us about it.
I think this, yeah.
Okay. That is a major concern. I've been sitting here and I was gonna come up here and say, if you do a 20-foot high flagpole, right, there's gotta be some engineering on that, because if you only, say you go to frost depth of 24 inches in the ground, well, let's just say there's no criteria, there's no permit, nobody looks at nothing. Let's just say they bore not even a 12-inch diameter hole, and they put down 30 inches, nobody knows, or 42 inches. What happens, the higher you go, it's like a lever. If you go 30 feet in the air and I'm only 24 or 42 inches in the ground, you don't have any lateral stability whatsoever. I'll give you an exaggerated scenario. Take a cell tower. They're 100 foot in the air, right? Well, I've looked at the caissons that they put down in the ground for those, and they're 100 foot down in the ground and so many feet plus the tie cables to pick up the lateral resistance. That's really exaggerated. However, that flagpole up at 20 foot, if there's not some design criteria, I don't want to see everybody that puts a flagpole in and say they have to go to engineering, but if there's a stamped engineered design for that, let's just say they want them in a 16, 18-inch diameter hole and say 50 inches down and 20 foot, and that's what works, then that's what should be inspected, and it should have a permit for it. Because if somebody does put it, say that it's not sufficient, there's been fatalities out there where flagpoles have fallen and causing injuries.
The commonly available poles, okay, at the big box stores, and let's blame Home Depot because they're closest.
Okay.
You can go down there and buy a flagpole. And looking at it, the highest they have right now, I think, is 18 feet. That's what they've got. Each of those things has recommended manufacturers' requirements to install it. I would think that if they submitted that, the manufacturers don't want the liability of having some yahoo put up a 18-foot flagpole with a 12-inch and 42-inch. They've got specific statements saying this thing will work as long as you don't put up too big a flag. And they all say that. I mean, this is based on you using, I guess it might even be a 30 square foot, but I'm not sure about that. I think they were smaller than that. I'm not positive.
And there's gonna, what you'd wanna look at when you buy that, a lot of time there's a disclaimer on them. Check local jurisdiction for their requirements. If that's what their recommendation is, and it seems to be, deep, enough width on it, I don't know. I haven't seen one.
So you want to see a civil engineer or someone of equivalent professional expertise, and I can't think of anybody who's, except a civil engineer, who would have equivalent expertise. You want to see a certificate or design or something from them in order to install that thing. Is that
Depends.
correct?
I'd like to see what they have in that recommendation, how it's written. I know they sell a lot of those gazebo type things you put on your patios, and they sell them at the box stores all the time. Sam's Clubs has them different, and when you read the fine print on those, they'll tell you check local jurisdiction, and see if people put them in, but they sometimes will just put down little lag screws, put them on the patios. They're susceptible to failure, but
What kind of wordage would you like, or what is your recommendation that we should be adopting?
We don't wanna make it too hard, but we wanna keep it safe to where you don't wanna, have people that wanna have a flagpole, spend, if they can get, engineered design, like a minimum standard that would be stamped, let's say these fold poles are all 20-foot high.
Right.
And, I'd like to look at the, specifications on them. If they're showing that they're going 60 deep and they got an 18-inch diameter hole, that's way overkill. I'm comfortable with that.
What
But
you're
I'd like to
asking
see
for is
what
a-
they're putting.
You're asking for as a civil engineer,
Yes, not a civil, a structural engineer.
But if I buy it from the box store and it has they've already done that.
If
Says
they've
this
done
is
that,
the
we're
requirements
fine with it,
to
yes.
install this flagpole, then we don't need to have a residence call.
So you want manufacturer recommendations or
Or, right, and if they're.
Professional installation.
professional engineer?
Right. And then a permit, obviously, for it, so we can inspect that that hole was dug to that diameter, to that specification.
You want a whole inspection.
Mike, what do you
Yes, a
think is,
whole-
what, and perhaps we can just, for a 20-foot flagpole, what should they have there?
I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't feel comfortable with the 12-inch post hole at 42.
Okay, I'm.
you know what, again,
I
I-
totally agree and understand.
Yeah.
But rather than doing this over and over and over again, why don't we have a standard, it must have a base of,
I feel it's gonna vary, Bill, because
Why?
even though it's 20 foot, poles can be wider, thicker, and carry more mass, carry more
but
flag.
they still can't get any
So-
higher than 20 feet.
But it's gonna vary based on how much
We're
flag
saying
you put on it.
we're saying you can't have more than 30 feet. That's what it says here.
Or
But he's saying
manufacturer
some
recommendations.
poles are more are
Yeah,
safe.
some flags can carry more weight based
Just-
on
that's
the
right.
specs.
Justin's 100% right. There could be
Yeah.
somebody to come in, not go to the back store, get a more massive pole. A lot more weight to it. We don't know if they're gonna wanna put a bolted connection down there. I mean, there's
Yeah,
different ways
it's
to
gonna
install
vary
these.
Based on all
You
manufacturers.
can put a, let's say you dig a post hole in the ground and you put, bolts into the ground, say 2 feet deep, and you come up like a plate, like a lot of them are installed. And then you have a base plate with bolts. I mean, there's all different ways they can do this, and that's why I'm saying I'd like to see
Per manufacturer.
at least per manufacturer spec or a structural engineer seal on that.
Or a civil engineer.
Civil engineer doesn't usually do structural.
Simpson did it all the time.
Well, Mark Simpson is an actual structural engineer.
Is he?
Yes, he definitely had structure, I'm positive.
Okay.
I've
'cause
worked with him
I
several times.
know he was signing off on decks
Yes,
on a weekly basis.
yep, and he does, all the Orchard Construction's pole barns, he was
Yeah.
doing those too. He was doing the engineering on those, but Mark Simpson is a structural.
Okay.
Richard was a, licensed architect, so yeah,
And that's the reason they always had Simpson signing everything.
exactly.
Okay.
So to clarify, we want permits to make sure that the installation is done according to manufacturer's recommendations, right?
Or if it's,
Or better. but-
yeah, if they're
Or a structural engineer.
structural
If you don't
engineered
have
stamp
that.
seal on them, they really should
Well,
be.
that's what the permit's for, make sure
Yeah.
Yeah.
whoever we send out knows what they're doing.
Karen, you were concerned about limiting the location, was that what you were saying?
Well, I believe at the last meeting, there's language in there that states your height can't, basically, the height can't, exceed how far the pole is from the property line, with the exception of if you have it in the rear, there was a suggestion, if your neighbor signs off, it could, that exception could be waived in the rear of the property, rear side yard. And, I don't know if the planning commission still wanted to move forward with that language, and then we could clarify that. But I felt that it was conflicting with one of the main issues of why we're bringing this up.
So that's safety issue.
I see the point, I get, then are we gonna also look at, and maybe this is out there, if a person plants a tree 5 feet from the property line, a tree that's gonna exceed 5 feet, do we limit placement of the tree, because the tree could fall down one day? Throwing it out the other way, right? I mean, if you're putting
Trees
it in
aren't
per
flagged.
manufacturer specification, you're not flying a flag that exceeds.
Well, we could add that to the tree one, but right now we're just talking.
Yeah,
about
no,
light poles.
yeah, but if you're following all the specs, it's installed properly, you're not going too big on a flag, it should never be an issue, right? If it gets rusted out, it's not maintained, we have other ordinances and stuff that can be enforced for safety and hazards and not have to limit the placement of a flagpole.
The main issue here was Mike wants, some engineering specs behind this. That's the single driving factor of what we need here. The rest of it, they don't care, do you?
No, the rest of it, no,
So-
just
How
the
many,
safety
how
of the,
He just doesn't care about any of that. He just wants, he's saying to everybody, hey, we need some engineering data here, because you can't tell what some yahoo's gonna do if they just take a postal digger and put, the one from Home Depot up and say it's good.
Call mistake,
Pardon?
call mistake first.
Call the mistake first, please do, unless you wanna electrocute yourself.
well, any time in the code where you don't have something that's prescriptive in that code book, in a residential code, there's no flagpoles in there. So anytime you do any type of building structures, anything that's not prescriptive, it's designed by analysis, what automatically pushes you to engineering, which, that's, what I'm recommending, that somebody stamp and seal it. And I'm sure that, there's gonna be different types of coming in. You know, there won't only be just the one from the box store. You know, decides that they wanna buy one from another entity and put, like, again, I said, you know, a post hole, footing in the ground, say a 24-inch diameter they might do. And they might put it in a sonotube and go beyond 42 and have J bolts with the base plate like we do a lot of the light poles you see around. We don't know, you know, again, and that's always has engineering on it. And when I go out to do my inspection, I'll see that spec and what's on there, and I see that that diameter of that hole and that depth is there.
Don't we all agree that you, from what
For
Mike's
safety.
asking, we need that, the engineering certification?
So we just,
I think we can argue about all the rest of it, but
So on number one, the last sentence says a plot plan showing the location of the flagpole shall be submitted along with product specifications. So I think what you're saying is add to that, saying, yes, we need the plot plan with the product specifications, but then some kind of a,
Engineered by a design
structural
professional.
engineer's certification,
Right.
is that correct?
Designed professional.
Well, a structural
Structural
engineer
engineer.
design versus a manufacturer could be two different things.
Yes.
So we don't wanna just say you have to have a structural engineer, because then, even though you have the manufacturer recommendations, we would accept.
A lot of times the manufacturers, I like to see, because they usually don't wanna just carte blanche stamp those and just leave it generic.
Right,
They'll
we're
put a
not
fun.
gonna stamp 'em, but this is what the manufacturers tested and said works, which should be.
I'd like to see that language on there, cause usually they tell you to check local jurisdiction, they just leave it vague. I don't know if they, I haven't seen one, I'd like to, you know, I guess if you wanna table that until we bring suspect, but what if somebody, again, I guess if you could word it, if there is manufacturer specifications that they're certifying it, which, without a seal, it doesn't, you know, usually when I'm seeing these manufacturers' recommendations, they're always throwing that disclaimer down there.
I
Right.
did read some of that, and Mike's right. They've got their recommendations, but you're also getting into soil conditions.
Right.
Because I hate sending someone off to go get a structural engineer's certification on it, but you've got soil conditions all over this village, which you ought to be site-specific about what that footing, because that's what we're talking about,
Right.
what that footing actually is that correct?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, because a
'cause-
lot of times what they'll do is they'll design to the worst soil, unless you see it's real bad, I mean, bad soil, I can see it. But what they would do, a minimum is like 1,500 PSI.
Yeah.
And they would design to the minimum. Now, if they're asking to verify that there's 3,000 pounds soil bearing, that automatically brings a geotech in that has to test that with the Housel or whatever and verify they're getting that 3,000 pounds bearing. So if I get, let's just say a plan comes in and it says, soil bearing capacity, 3,000, check with soil engineering. That means they have to actually get a geotech out there after that hole is dug, test that soil to see if it is. Most will design at the minimum of 1,500, we will assume, as long as I don't see, peat and still the organics and, just, you didn't get through the black dirt where you get down into the, the clays and the sands, and you could tell, I've got enough experience where I know bad soil, where I question it, but even in the, if you have like a sandy, black type soil down there where you haven't got to the hard clay yet, which, clay is an expansive, material anyway, it shrinks and lifts, but again, 1,500, you wouldn't need to get an engineer. Once they go over 1,500 PSI, and they'll put that right in there, 3,000, checked by soil engineer. Now you're caught with 2 engineers. But and I don't think that, but that's I have not seen one on something like a flagpole. It's usually when they're putting big monument signs in. I've seen that where they'll design it to 3,000 PSI. You get the soil checked. If they don't get 3,000, then they have to go back to that guy that designed it, let him know, and he'll design a wider, bigger footing.
Mike, what do you feel for the residential district would be a reasonable requirement?
Just to have
Statement.
just an engineered stamp on those.
Every one of them.
And I can guarantee you that they're probably gonna design it to 1,500.
Okay, that's,
Yeah.
And an open hole inspection.
Well, I'd have to do an open hole inspection on it, absolutely.
Karen, do you have enough information to add this in there?
I think we
can talk to
originally had
Mike
it in
and-
there, didn't we?
Mike can give,
Yeah.
you guys can talk and
And I think
add
we
some
took it out because
verbiage
we
in
thought
here.
it was crazy to ask
Just one more.
people to get an engineer.
And that
It
was,
sounds crazy, but you know
Yeah.
what,
It's not.
I don't wanna see any body bags on my watch. I mean, if that's a possibility to save one life that could have been prevented, there's not a price you put on safety to try to, save a few dollars on engineering. It's just not worth
Karen and Mike
it.
talk and work up some verbiage on this that's appropriate.
Karen
for
and Mike
what-
can talk.
Karen, you
Sounds
have
good.
the,
And we can table this for
no,
another,
like, no.
We don't need to make motion, it'll come back.
Okay,
We need a,
we're gonna make it up for our flagpole.
all right, anybody wanna add to the flagpole discussion? Say no. Okay.
No.
Motion to adjourn, yes.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
We're gonna need cots.
this is nothing.